This is the TobenONE DisplayLink Docking Station, and it was sent to me free of charge so that I could check it out and tell you all about it. Now, my very first impression of this is its build quality. It is very premium feeling, and I think you can listen to this. It is actually made of metal, so the construction is very solid. Again, a little bit hefty, which makes it feel very premium. Now, let's go over the ports and what you get in the box and all that. So I'm going to get into all of it as best as I can, and hopefully this will help you make an informed buying decision. All right. So on the back, one of the first things that strikes my attention is that it has a connection to the laptop, and it catches my attention because this has the connectivity to the laptop on the back. Now, I have another docking station that has the connection in the front, which I think is a little bit counterintuitive, because really what you don't want is to have cables in front of you. You want to have the cables in the back, at least the ones that are not connected and unplugged often. So the host cable is usually meant to be on all the time or most of the time, so you want that out of the way. So with this one you do get that. It is in the back, so it's really out of the way. Now in the back you also get 4 HDMI ports. Now this does support 4 displays as long as you are using a Windows system. In my case, I am using a Mac system. This is a Mac Studio, and if you're using a Mac, this will only support 3 displays, and I'll get into it in just a second. You also get 2 USB-A ports. Now these are 5 gigabit ports. You have another additional USB-C port for data, and you have a 1 gigabit Ethernet port. You also have a DC port because it also comes with a 120 watt brick that you can use to power the device. Now a little bit more on that later, but you do need to know that you actually do need the brick, okay? And it's good to have a 120 watts charger or a 120 watt brick, because this will power your laptop. If your laptop supports charging via the same USB port that you use to connect to this docking station, then it will power your laptop for up to 100 watts. So that's very good. In the bottom you get a couple of rubber feet so that it doesn't slip, and it is meant to be placed in this vertical position as such. So the feet do a very good job at not slipping, okay, on your desk. Now on the front you have 2 additional USB-C ports. Now these are 5 gigabits and they are power delivery, but up to 18 watts each. So you also have a 3.5 millimeter jack for your headset. You also got 3 more USB-A ports. Now these ones actually support 10 gigabits each. Okay, so you have a lot of high-speed connection, and you got a TF reader or a micro SD card reader, as well as a SD card, full-size SD card reader. So you got a lot of connectivity in the front as well as in the back, but in the back, like I mentioned before, you usually have the cables that you don't plug and unplug too often, and in the front would be any devices that you plug and unplug fairly often. Now the 2 USB ports can be used for charging, and like I mentioned, they are power delivery for up to 18 watts. Now you do see this right here with a very satisfying click. This is the power button to turn on the device when you first plug it in. Now on the note of plugging it in, when you connect the USB-C port to your computer, the device will not power on unless it is connected to the brick, to the charging brick. And once it's connected to the charging brick, you can power it on, and once it's powered on, the USB port will probably provide enough power for it to remain on. So in the event of a power outage, this will continue to work as long as it is connected still to the USB-C port. If you happen to unplug the DC barrel and plug it again, it's going to reset the unit, and it's going to power off, so you have to turn it on again. But that's only if you remove and plug it back in, because there's usually some sort of detection or switch inside the DC connectors that tell the device when a plug is being plugged in, and so that causes the device to reset. If there is a power outage, like I said, it will remain on only with the USB-C power, and when the power comes back on, it's not going to affect the unit at all. Okay, so I tested this by unplugging it from the wall and plugging it back in, and the connection was seamless with this. Now, one of the main features of this is, of course, the 4 display capability. Now, I think I mentioned before already, if you're using a Windows system, you can connect up to 4 displays, but if you're using a Mac system, you can only use up to 3 displays. Okay, now, HDMI ports 1 and 2 do require drivers. You have to download the DisplayLink drivers. These are kind of generic in a way, in the sense that they work for a lot of devices, a lot of USB-C docks. I had previously downloaded these DisplayLink drivers to test another dock that I was sent, and the same drivers work for this one. So it's generic in that way. I think the word is not generic, but more like a standard. It is a standard. So DisplayLink drivers will power HDMI ports 1 and 2, and they support up to 4K 60. Now, the ports HDMI 3 and 4, these work differently in Windows and in Mac. In both systems, it is plug and play. It does not require a driver. If you do not have the DisplayLink drivers, you can still use HDMI ports 3 and 4 with one caveat that I will mention in just a second. Display or the HDMI ports rather 1 and 2 will not work at all if you don't have the DisplayLink drivers installed. Now, in Windows, the ports HDMI 3 and 4 can be used at the same time, and they will provide separate resolutions, separate images, so meaning that you can have 2 monitors with different displays or different screens in each. Now, the HDMI 4 port supports up to 8K at 30 frames per second, but this is only when it is the only HDMI cable plugged in. I'm not including HDMI 1 and 2. You can use HDMI 2 and HDMI 4. So if you need the 8K 30 frames per second display, if you have such a display, you can plug it into the HDMI port. And if you want more screens or more monitors, you will have to use HDMI 1 and 2 using the DisplayLink drivers. Okay, if you plug in the HDMI 3 along with the HDMI 4, then you will lose the 8K connectivity or the 8K display capability, and both will be at 4K 60. If you use all 4 HDMI, you will have 4K 60 for all of them. Now, that was for Windows systems. On Mac OS, there is the one caveat that I was going to mention, and that is that displays connected to HDMI 3 and 4 will have the same exact image. They do not require drivers again, but they will have the same exact image. Okay, so you can use either one. And on Mac, you do not have 8K resolution on these ports, or at least on this dock. They do support up to 4K 60, but you can use either HDMI 3 or HDMI 4. But if you use both, know that they will duplicate the image on both displays. So both displays will have the same image. So you can have up to 3 displays, meaning that you can connect HDMI 1 and 2 via DisplayLink drivers, and they will have separate images, and you will have the third display either in HDMI 3 or HDMI 4. That's how you connect 3 displays in macOS. Now, there is a note in the listing, and I don't remember if the manual as well, but or the quick start guide rather, and that is that DisplayLink drivers or the monitors connected to ports HDMI 1 and 2, which use the DisplayLink drivers, that do not support orientation rotation in macOS at least. And that is true if you go to the display settings on macOS. However, I noticed that using the DisplayLink drivers, you can rotate the display because there is an option in the menu, right in the menu bar at the top. So you can select to rotate 90, 180, and 270 degrees with absolutely no problem. Okay, so do keep in mind that if you want to rotate the DisplayLink drivers, at least in macOS, you have the option to do it, but you have to do it through the DisplayLink software and not on the display settings on macOS. So all in all, a very high quality device. I was very pleased. My expectations were actually not very high because of the need to use DisplayLink drivers. However, I was very pleased to be able to use it without DisplayLink drivers, with the one caveat that if you're using macOS, you can only use one of the 2 HDMI ports, and if you use both of them, they will duplicate the image. Okay, so with that one caveat, but other than that, I was very happy to be able to use this without DisplayLink drivers. And the one reason that I do not like DisplayLink drivers, I mean, they are very convenient if you need the extra displays, and if you need to have 4 in the case of Windows or 3 in the case of Mac. But the one caveat, or the one thing that I don't like about DisplayLink drivers, is that you cannot stream protected content such as Netflix, HBO Max, and such streaming services because the image is completely blocked. You can still hear the audio, but you cannot see anything as long as the drivers are active. So regardless of whether or not you have the displays connected, if the software is running with an active display, then you cannot see the image. Now this is very easy to toggle on and off. If you really want to watch on Netflix or HBO Max or whatever, you really want to use it, you do not have to unplug anything. Okay, so you should know that the only thing that you have to do is go to the DisplayLink drivers and toggle it off. You don't have to quit the software. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. At least on macOS, you do get a little toggle switch to just toggle off the display, so the displays using DisplayLink drivers will turn off, or the image at least will turn off, and you will now be able to watch your Netflix and HBO and whatever. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind. But it is an inconvenience in my opinion, at least for my use case. But I am very tempted to replace my current docking station with this one. One, because it is smaller, and the other one because I can use it without DisplayLink drivers, and I really like the look of it, but mostly because it's smaller. Now I currently have 3 displays running at the same time. I do not have DisplayLink drivers with this one, which is the other docking station. However, this is the one monitor that I use. These 2 are portable monitors, so I tend to disconnect this one a lot, and then when I do, I guess I'm used to just using the widescreen and the one in the bottom. So in this case, I am very happy to use the TobenONE display. If I ever need the extra display and I do not want to use the DisplayLink drivers, then I can go back to this one. I should note, or should clarify, that this use case that I'm talking about right now is with these 2 displays being connected to Thunderbolt. Okay, so this one does not extend the Thunderbolt port. The other docking station that I have does, and that's why sometimes I kind of lean toward that, but that has the other caveat of having the connection in the front instead of the back and whatnot. So honestly, I'm really liking this one a lot better, simply because of again, it's smaller, it looks really good, it does not get interrupted when there is a power outage. This one that I'm using right now, it does, and whenever I have a power outage, the displays just turn off because the docking station itself turns off, and I have to go over way in the back of the monitors to turn it back on, and it's very inconvenient. So this one is a lot more convenient in that regard. So very happy with this one. TobenONE USB docking station with DisplayLink drivers, up to 4 displays for Windows, 3 for macOS. DisplayLink drivers needed in case you want to use all the available displays for each operating system. Otherwise, you can simply use the plug and play feature. Okay, so I like it a lot. Hope that this video was helpful. Hope to see you in the next one, and until then, may God bless you all.